Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tearing into a source that's become this really powerful, sort of unconventional manifesto for modern creators. It's Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist, 10 Things Nobody Told You About Being Creative.
And this is, I think, an absolutely essential deep dive for anyone who feels stuck, stuck between that desire to create something and just the overwhelming anxiety of, is this original? Kleon wrote this guide, and I love this part, as advice to his 19-year-old self.
Yeah.
And because of that, that personal lens makes the advice incredibly direct, very tactical, and it's applicable whether you're, a painter, a software engineer, or even a small business owner.
I love that. It just takes the fear right out of the process, doesn't it? The book's core idea basically throws out that whole notion of the solitary genius, waiting for a lightning bolt of inspiration, and it replaces it with a structured, repeatable, and frankly, a pretty ordinary process. So our mission today is to really distill Kleon's 10 rules into a structured playbook for you, focusing on how to resolve those two biggest creative fears: the terror of not being original and just, the sheer exhaustion of feeling constantly distracted.
And we have to tackle the title right away. Steal like an artist.
Right, let's get into it.
Kleon is starting the conversation by embracing this long, kind of provocative history of influence. He quotes Picasso, who said, "Art is theft." But the key is that the theft has to be sophisticated. He leans on T.S. Eliot's distinction.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah, immature poets imitate, but mature poets steal. And the real mark of the artist, Eliot argues, is when they take that stolen material and they weld it into a whole, something unique, something utterly different from where it was torn.
So we're not talking about plagiarism, not at all.
No, this is the opposite.
We're talking about synthesis, about transformation. It's about taking these fragments of things we love and putting them together in a way that generates something completely new, a signature output. So let's dive into that. Let's start with rule number 1, which is really the revolutionary concept at the heart of the whole thing. Steal like an artist. When an artist gets asked, where do you get your ideas? Kleon says the honest, the liberating answer is, I steal them.
And this is the massive worldview shift. This is what unlocks creativity for so many people. It just fundamentally changes the internal filter you apply to everything you consume.
So?
Well, instead of constantly worrying, is this good, is this bad, which is, paralyzing and totally subjective, the filter becomes purely tactical. It's just, is this stuff worth stealing? Versus, is it not worth stealing? That's it.
That reframes the entire process of consumption, right? Suddenly, every movie, every piece of architecture, every little snippet of conversation you overhear, it's all potential raw material. David Bowie had a great line about this. He said something like, "The only art I'll ever study is stuff that I can steal from." It turns just watching a movie or listening to music into focused research.
And that tactical approach works because we have to accept a core truth, which can be hard to swallow at first. Nothing is original. The writer Jonathan Lethem, he suggests that when we call a work original, it usually just means we're unaware of the references. We just don't know the sources the creator was pulling from.
And this idea has been around forever. It's in Ecclesiastes, right? There is nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
When people first hear that, I think it can sound a bit depressing. Like, if everything has been done, why even bother?
Right, what's the point? But Kleon presents this as incredibly hopeful. He quotes the French writer André Gide, who said that since everything has already been said, but no one was listening, everything must be said again.
That gives you permission, doesn't it? Permission to try again, but in your own voice, with your own perspective.
It frees us. It frees us from that exhausting pressure to invent something completely out of thin air. We're allowed to embrace influence, which leads right to this idea of the genealogy of ideas.
It's genealogy of ideas. So every new idea is just a mashup, a remix of what came before.
A remix, a mutation, exactly.
I love the visual for this, the one they teach in art school, the 1 + 1 = 3 thing.
Oh, yeah, tell me.
You draw two parallel lines. You've got line A and line B, but the space between them, that negative space, that's line C. The synthesis is always bigger than the sum of its parts. That's where the novelty is.
That is the perfect metaphor. And think about it in terms of genetics. You're a remix of your parents, but you are not only your parents. You have characteristics they don't, or you recombine their features in a totally new way.
And the best part of that metaphor is, while you don't choose your family, your actual genealogy.
You absolutely choose your idea genealogy.
That's such a powerful distinction. You choose your mentors, your teachers, the books you read, the music you listen to. Goethe said, "We are shaped and fashioned by what we love."
And it's not just about high art either. Jay-Z talked about this, about his own inspirations. He said something like, "We were kids without fathers, so we found our fathers on wax and on the streets and in history."
Wow.
He said, "We got to pick and choose the ancestors who would inspire the world we were going to make for ourselves."
That's a conscious act of building your own intellectual lineage.
It is.
Yeah.
But that brings us to a really crucial warning in the book: garbage in, garbage out.
Ah, yes.
If you're defined by what you choose to love, then you have to be a selective collector, not a hoarder. You're only as good as the stuff you surround yourself with. Kleon even brings in this economic theory that your income often averages out to the income of your 5 closest friends. He suggests the same is true for your idea income.
Okay, but that raises a really practical challenge. We're all bombarded by this fire hose of information from the internet. How does a selective artist avoid, intellectual gluttony? How do you tell the difference between ideas that genuinely speak to your soul and just gym food ideas?
That's where the Jim Jarmusch quote becomes the ultimate guide. It's
Yeah.
the filter.
Right.
He says to steal from anywhere: films, dreams, architecture, light, but this is the critical part. Select only things to steal from that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and theft will be authentic.
The soul test.
The soul test is the filter. If you only steal what you truly deeply love, the resulting mashup will have to be a reflection of you.
And that highly personal selection is what makes the final thing unique, even if the parts are borrowed. So to do this systematically, Kleon says we have to climb the family tree.
Yes, because trying to devour the entire history of your field all at once,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. It leads to paralysis.
So you start small.
You start with one person. Kleon takes inspiration from Marcel Duchamp, who said, "I don't believe in art. I believe in artists." Start with one person whose work you absolutely adore.
And the approach is really methodical. You devour one specific thinker or artist or, or role model. You study everything about them, their influences, their early failures, their process. And then
Then you find the 3 people that person loved, the 3 people they cited as influences. And you repeat the process, up the chain.
the benefits of that seem huge. For one, you get context. You realize you're part of this long, ongoing conversation.
It reduces that feeling of being alone. Kleon mentions keeping pictures of his favorite artists in his studio and feeling them like friendly ghosts pushing me forward. They give you courage, and they give you a framework.
And the other benefit is that dead masters can't turn you down. They can't reject you as an apprentice.
Exactly. Their work is the lesson plan. It's just sitting there waiting for you to study it.
This all emphasizes that creative education is a lifelong, active thing. You have to school yourself. You have to be actively curious, always looking things up, chasing down every single reference, whether you're in school or not. RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan said it perfectly. Whether I went to school or not, I would always study.
And that study is relentless.
Yeah.
It means Googling everything: your dreams, your problems, some historical event that was mentioned in passing in a book you're reading. You read bibliographies. And that search, it either leads you to the answer you needed, or even better, it leads you to a better, more focused question.
I love the line from the book. It's not the book you start with, it's the book that book leads you to. That chain reaction, that's the real education.
It is. It's about maintaining that thirst for the unread and unexplored. John Waters, the filmmaker, he understood this. He said, "Nothing is more important than an unread library. It just represents endless possibility."
Okay, so you're climbing the tree, you're schooling yourself, you're collecting all this amazing material. Where do you put it all? You need a system to save your thefts for later.
And the advice here is simple. It's classic. Always carry a notebook and a pen.
Always.
Jot down observations, copy passages from books, record those little snippets of conversation you overhear.
And all this stuff needs a home. He calls it a swipe file. It can be a physical scrapbook, a folder on your computer, whatever, but it's a living collection of every idea or image or phrase you thought was worth stealing.
So when you need inspiration, you just open the swipe file. It's like a bank of intellectual capital you can draw from.
Kleon uses a slightly more macabre term from the newspaper world, the morgue file.
Yes, it's where you keep the dead things you plan to reanimate later in your own work. Mark Twain had a great quote about this, something like, "It is better to take what does not belong to you than to let it lie around neglected."
But the key is that the file has to be reviewed, right? It can't just be a digital junkyard.
Absolutely. The material will just become clutter otherwise. You have to have a process. Maybe you review it every Friday afternoon or the first Monday of the month. It has to be an active collection.
And that active review is what turns the collection into real inspiration. Okay, let's move to the direct application of all this influence. Rule number 3, write the book you want to read.
This flips that common and often paralyzing advice of write what you know.
Oh, I hate that advice.
Me too.
Ugh.
Writing what you know can lead to really boring, navel-gazing stories. The truly great advice is to write what you like, or even better, write what you crave.
It's about channeling desire into production. We've all had that feeling, right? You finish a book or a movie you love, and you just desperately want a sequel that doesn't exist. Or maybe the one that does exist just missed the mark completely.
Kleon tells a great story about writing his own Jurassic Park 2 fan fiction when he was 10.
Because the real one was so bad.
In his opinion, yeah, it sucked. And that deep, passionate craving for a specific type of art is the most potent engine for making your own.
It becomes your manifesto. If you can't find the art you want to see in the world, draw it. If the business model you want doesn't exist, start it. If you're craving a sound that hasn't been produced yet, go make that music yourself.
Brian Eno talked about this. He said his interest in making music was always to create something that didn't exist that he would want to listen to. It's proactive desire.
There's a perfect example of this with the band Deer Hunter. The frontman, Bradford Cox, would sometimes record a fake version of a highly anticipated new album from another band he loved.
Just for himself.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to trick anybody. He was just channeling his own anticipation for that new material into creation. And a lot of those fake album ideas eventually became real Deer Hunter songs.
Wow. So if you're ever at a loss, just paralyzed by what to do next, you can just ask yourself, what would make a better story?
Exactly. That question immediately forces a narrative shift. It makes your life, your project, whatever it is. It makes it an exercise in dramatic possibility, not just anxious perfectionism.
Okay, so that's a great transition. We've talked about the philosophy of stealing, and now we get into the bias for action, for actually making stuff.
Right. Part 2 is where the philosophical acceptance of theft meets the physical need for output. And this brings us to rule number 2. Don't wait until you know who you are to get started.
This is so critical. I mean, for anyone listening, this is a big one. Identity, Kleon insists, isn't figured out in contemplation. It's figured out in the act of making things.
You are ready now.
You're ready now. Start building, start writing, start coding, whatever it is. And in that process, you'll start to define the boundaries of your abilities and your interests.
But that internal friction is so intense. The book talks about imposter syndrome, that feeling of being a phony, being unable to internalize your own accomplishments. It's everywhere, especially among high-achieving people.
And the most liberating thing you can hear, I think, is that everyone is winging it.
Everyone.
Truly creative people don't have a magic source for the good stuff. They just know they have to show up every day and do the work. They do not wait for self-certainty.
Which leads right into that powerful and often misunderstood idea of fake it till you make it.
Right. Kleon breaks this down into 2 very different interpretations. The first one is kind of problematic. Pretend to be successful until you are.
Right. The snake oil salesman version.
Exactly. But the second, much more productive one is pretend to be making something until you actually make something.
It's rooted in dramaturgy, right? The idea that creative work is a performance. You have to set the stage. There's a great quote from Glenn O'Brien. You start out as a phony and become real.
The trick is just setting up that theater, establishing the routine and the props for yourself.
So the stage is your desk or your studio. Your costume is your work uniform, whatever signals to your brain that it's time to start. The props are your tools, your materials.
And the script is simply the block of time you've set aside for the action to happen.
The story of Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe from the book Just Kids is the perfect illustration of this. They were dirt poor, often hungry, but they learned to be artists by pretending to be artists.
They dressed the part in their bohemian gear. They went to the places where artists gathered.
And there's that moment in the book where a tourist looks at them and just dismisses them, says they're just kids. And it reveals everything. They were putting on the identity, acting into the role, until that role became their reality.
It's an act of profound self-conviction. It's a refusal to wait for permission or for some outside validation.
So how do you start making something when you have no idea what to make? The advice is simple, but it's often culturally suppressed. Start copying.
We really need to be careful with this one. We are not advocating for plagiarism.
Right.
We're talking about copying as a form of reverse engineering. It's the mechanic taking apart a car engine to understand how it works. It's how musicians start. They practice scales. They learn cover songs.
And it's the most direct path to finding your own unique voice. The designer Yohji Yamamoto said, start copying what you love. Copy, 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 copy. At the end of the copy, you will find yourself.
The Beatles? I mean, one of the greatest original songwriting teams in history, they started as a cover band. They only started writing their own songs because they ran out of other people's songs to play that other bands weren't already doing.
But okay, how do you make sure your copying leads to synthesis and not just empty imitation?
Yeah.
How do you know if you're copying the thinking behind the style and not just the surface level stuff?
That requires critical analysis.
Hmm?
If you only copy the surface, the color palette, the font, the turn of phrase, your work will always feel like a knockoff.
It'll be hollow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to ask why the original creator made those choices. What problem were they trying to solve with that decision? That kind of forensic reverse engineering of their decision-making process is the true theft that Kleon is talking about.
And crucially, you can't just copy one hero. The writer, Wilson Misner, had a great line. If you copy from one author, it's plagiarism, but if you copy from many, it's research.
And the cartoonist Gary Panter took it a step further. He said, if you rip off 100 people, everyone will call you original.
The great news here is that there's this built-in evolutionary mechanism working for us, which is that the human hand is incapable of making a perfect copy.
Yes, that failure to perfectly emulate your hero, that's where your own uniqueness emerges. The necessary flaw becomes your signature.
The journey of Conan O'Brien is a perfect example of this. He said he realized his entire career was defined by this kind of failure. Johnny Carson tried to be Jack Benny but ended up as Carson. Letterman tried to copy Carson and became Letterman.
And O'Brien tried to emulate Letterman and became O'Brien.
Yeah. He said, it is our failure to become our perceived ideal that ultimately defines us and makes us unique. It's not the goal, but the inevitable deviation from the goal that gives you a style.
So this shifts the action from simple imitation to emulation. Imitation is just duplicating. Emulation is copying that goes one step further. It's adapting the moves to your own unique constraints.
Kobe Bryant is a phenomenal example. He admitted he stole every single one of his moves from his basketball heroes, Jordan, Magic, Jerry West, but he had to adapt them.
Because he had a different body type.
Exactly. He had a different height, different physical attributes. And that adaptation, that necessary personal flaw, is what transforms the theft into the highest form of flattery.
You're transforming their work into something of your own, adding a piece to the world that only your specific set of flaws and experiences could create.
Okay, so we've established that creative action means embracing failure and copying. Let's talk about the physical space where that action should happen. Rule number 4, use your hands. Step away from the screen.
The cartoonist Linda Berry's mantra is perfect here. In the digital age, don't forget to use your digits.
I love that.
Computers make knowledge work so abstract. We're just typing keys, clicking a mouse. We lose the physical, tactile feeling of actually making something.
And that abstraction is alienating. Stanley Donwood, the artist who does all the Radiohead album art, he said that computers put a sheet of glass between you and your work. You never truly touch it. Your body is just disconnected.
So we have to find a way to re-engage the body. Because work that comes only from the head isn't any good. Our nerves aren't a one-way street. Moving your hands, shuffling physical objects, drawing something messy. It initiates creative thought in a way that pure digital input often can't.
This is so vital because computers, they often bring out the uptight perfectionist in us. The cartoonist, Tom Gauld, noted that the delete key lets us edit and self-censor ideas before they even have a chance to breathe. On a computer, he says, things are on an inevitable path to being finished.
So the strategy is simple. Analog is for generation and raw creativity. Digital is for editing, refinement, and publishing. You want the messiness and the freedom of the analog world for the birth of your ideas.
Kleon's own process for his book Newspaper Blackout is the perfect illustration of this analog loop. He used permanent markers on actual newsprint. It engaged his senses, the smell of the marker, the texture of the paper, the physical commitment of making a permanent mark.
And then when it came time to sequence the final book, he printed out all the individual poems on quarter sheets of paper and shuffled them around physically on the floor of his office.
He could see them all at once. He could touch them, rearrange the narrative physically before he copied the final order back to the computer. The physical act was the editorial process.
Which brings us to the really practical advice for today's creator. You need to set up 2 workstations.
The analog desk needs to be a screen-free zone. No electronics, just pens, paper, index cards, scissors, glue. This is the birth center for ideas.
And the digital desk with the laptop and the scanner, that's where you edit and publish. But, I mean, for digital natives, this is incredibly difficult. How do you actually enforce the rules of the analog desk? How do you stop yourself from immediately checking a fact on your phone the second an idea strikes?
That's the discipline, isn't it? You have to treat the analog space like craft time or like a focused, uninterruptible meeting. If you feel the need to look something up, you write it down on a physical index card and you put it in a pile labeled research later.
Right, so it allows the analog work to keep flowing without the paralyzing distraction of that internet rabbit hole.
The physical space should encourage messiness, experimentation, standing up and moving around. If you get stuck on the computer, go back to the analog station and just play.
All right, so if the first half of this playbook was about influence and the physicality of work, this next part is about sustainability and environment. It's the people and the productive distractions that keep the engine running.
Yes. Rule number 5. Side projects and hobbies are important.
This sounds so counterintuitive to the whole hustle culture thing, but Kleon points out that the side projects, the stuff you thought was just play or messing around, are often the things that unexpectedly take off and become your main work.
The designer Jessica Heish famously said, "The work you do while you procrastinate is probably the work you should be doing for the rest of your life." That's the definition of productive procrastination.
And having a bunch of projects also acts as a natural pressure release valve. When you get sick of Project A, you just move to Project B. It keeps inertia at bay. This is also why we need the need for boredom.
When I get busy, I get stupid. That's the perfect summary. Creative people need time to just sit and process. Mayor Kalman says, "Avoiding work is the way to focus my mind."
Yeah. Good ideas don't strike when you're in your inbox. They come when you're doing something mundane.
Yeah.
Washing dishes, taking a long walk, staring blankly at a wall.
Those moments of enforced boredom, they let the subconscious mind mash up all that stolen material you've got in your morgue file. If you're constantly consuming or constantly busy, you give the ideas no space to synthesize.
This is why artists often use waiting rooms or libraries or long commutes as creative time. It's enforced captivity. It forces the brain to look inward.
There's another key piece of advice for people who feel scattered. Don't throw yourself away. If you have 2 or 3 seemingly disconnected passions, say writing, rock climbing, and coding, you don't have to pick just one.
The playwright Stephen Tomlinson advises, let them talk to each other. Something will begin to happen.
If you cut off a genuine passion, you risk what he calls phantom limb pain. Kleon found this himself. He stopped playing music to focus completely on writing, but when he went back to playing in a band, his writing actually got better.
Because the musical rhythm and structure fed the structural thinking he needed for his prose.
Right. And the key is to have a hobby that is just for you. It should be non-monetized. It regenerates your energy. He says it's like church. And don't worry about trying to force some kind of unified vision onto all your work.
What unifies your work is the simple fact that you made it. You can't connect the dots looking forward, as Steve Jobs said. It's only looking backward that the pattern of your interests becomes clear. Just keep working, and that unity will emerge on its own.
Okay, now let's talk about the human environment. Rule number 8, be nice. The world is a small town.
In our hyper-connected world, this is less about simple morality and more about just self-preservation. Everyone has a Google alert on their name. If you talk about someone online, they will find out.
So Kleon advises that the best way to vanquish your enemies online is just to ignore them. And the best way to make friends is to consistently say nice things about the people you admire. Kurt Vonnegut's rule. There's only one rule I know of. You've got to be kind.
And this principle extends to who you allow into your physical and intellectual life. That garbage in, garbage out rule applies directly to people. You have to stand next to the talent.
You must surround yourself with people who are smarter, more disciplined, and better than you are.
Questlove says, the only mofos in my circle are people that I can learn from. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room.
This is famously called the Ramis Rule, after the director Harold Ramis. He said his rule for success was to find the most talented person in the room and stand next to him.
And if you realize you are the most talented person,
You need to find a new room. Immediately.
but embracing this, I mean, that's a huge ego challenge. It requires admitting that you're still an apprentice, you're still learning, and you're probably going to be outperformed.
How does someone... You have to reframe it. You're not there to compete. You're there to be infected by the quality of their thinking. You're there to steal their process. The moment your ego says, I deserve to be the leader here, that's the moment you stop collecting good ideas and you start producing garbage. You have to choose humility for the sake of your own material gain.
Okay, what about anger? The anger that inevitably comes up when you're dealing with the world or just the creative process itself. Kleon has great advice on how to channel rage.
Yeah, he tells a story about his wife shouting at him late one night, "Quit picking fights on Twitter and go make something."
That's the essential pivot. Don't waste that precious high-energy fuel of anger on lashing out or complaining. Channel it into your creative work.
Yeah.
Henry Rollins found that being both angry and curious is what keeps him moving.
But I'm curious about this. Rule 9, which we'll get to, says to be boring and orderly. Does channeling rage into your work require a kind of sustained, controlled anger, or is this just momentary venting? Does the violence of the original work that Flaubert talked about depend on external conflict?
I think it's a controlled release. The orderly life builds the container. It provides the routine and the energy, the rage, the reaction to injustice or mediocrity or a bad system. That's the momentary high-octane fuel that allows the work to be violent and original, but it has to be applied surgically to the creative act, not just wasted on external fights.
Right. As Andre Torres says, complain about the way other people make software by making software.
So if you admire someone's work, the most productive way to approach them is not by seeking their validation. Instead, you should write public fan letters.
Traditional fan letters are all about seeking a blessing, an affirmation that I am worthy, and that puts pressure on the person you admire, and it rarely gets you anywhere. Hugh MacLeod's advice is perfect. The best way to get approval is to not need it.
So the productive alternative is to create new work out of your appreciation. Write a detailed blog post analyzing their work and link to their site. Make something and dedicate it to them. Answer a tough question they've posed or solve a small problem for them online. This generates new, focused work that they will probably see, and it's based on appreciation, not neediness.
Because you have to accept early on that validation is for parking. Once you put your work out into the world, you lose all control over how people react. You will be misunderstood or disparaged or just ignored.
And good work often looks effortless, which leads to that infuriating reaction from people. Why didn't I think of that?
You just have to get comfortable with being misunderstood. The goal is to be too busy doing your work to even care about the noise. But since the creative process is so lonely and filled with self-doubt, we do need a small internal mechanism for survival.
And that mechanism is the praise file.
Yes. Instead of keeping a rejection file, which just drags you down, you keep a separate folder, digital or physical, of every genuinely kind and encouraging email or note you receive.
The praise file is an emotional cheat sheet. On those inevitable dark days when you just want to quit, you open the file, you read 3 things, you get an immediate psychological lift, and you get back to work.
You have to use it sparingly, right? Or it loses its power. It's survival gear, not daily sustenance.
Exactly. Okay, so now we're tackling the modern paradox. How to connect that solitary creative process with the shared digital world.
Part 4, rule number 6. Do good work and share it with people.
And the first piece of advice here is so counterintuitive for anyone obsessed with immediate success. Enjoy being unknown. Enjoy the gift of obscurity.
When you're unknown, there's no pressure. There's no public image to manage, no stakeholders to please. You have total freedom to experiment, to fail privately, and to get better without any judgment.
Stephen Pressfield has a great note on this. When people are ignoring you, they're not being mean or cruel, they're just busy. You should use that period of obscurity as a laboratory for uninhibited growth.
Then you move to the simple 2-step, not-so-secret formula. Step 1. Do good work. This is the hardest part. It requires discipline, failure, repetition.
And step 2, share it with people. This is the easiest part now, thanks to the internet. Just put your stuff on the internet.
The secret of the internet is deceptively simple. 1, wonder at something unique. 2, invite others to wonder with you. The more transparent and passionate you are about your influences and your interests, the closer people will feel to your final work.
This often means sharing secrets and revealing your process. But people are so resistant to this. Why? I think it's because they fear their work will be devalued if others know how easy it was or how hard it was.
But Kleon argues that revealing the process actually builds trust and provides valuable material for other people to steal. Think about Bob Ross, the painter with the happy little trees who taught millions how to paint. He gave his process secrets away for free.
Martha Stewart does the same thing. People love that transparency, and if you're smart about it, they'll reward you by buying the finished product or the tool you're selling.
And what's more, opening up your process benefits you. You learn from the audience interaction, and you discover new things to steal from that feedback loop. Kleon found a ton of material and new ideas from the submissions he got on his newspaper blackout website.
So the internet isn't just a place to publish finished ideas. It should be an incubator for developing your work. Having an online presence acts as a powerful kick in the pants because most platforms are reverse chronological. You're constantly being judged by your last post, which creates critical accountability.
That accountability keeps you moving through the classic creative cycle, which Kleon borrowed from Maureen McHugh. Best idea ever.
Harder than I thought.
Dark Night of the Soul, where I hate this and it sucks.
And then it's done, and it sucks less than I thought. The goal is just to finish and learn something for the next one.
And when you're sharing, you control the aperture. You don't have to reveal everything. You can share your dots, but don't connect them.
Right. Share a sketch, a snippet, a glimpse of your process, a handy tip. Learn some basic digital skills, but use that publish button wisely.
The fear that someone is going to steal your half-formed idea is almost always misplaced. Howard Aiken said, "If your ideas are any good, you'll have to ram them down people's throats."
Your job is to make them so good and share them so frequently that people can't ignore them.
Okay, rule number 7 addresses that perennial creative question. Geography is no longer our master.
Kleon grew up in a cornfield, so he knows that youthful desire to get to where something is happening. But today, you can build your own virtual art scene. He says 90% of his mentors and peers live somewhere else, but they're connected instantly via the internet.
So if you're geographically stuck because of circumstance or money or family, you can take heart. You can start connecting with the world you want to be in from exactly where you are. And if you're not into your current geographic world, you can build your room around you with the books, objects, and art that you love.
Franz Kafka's quote, written long before the internet, feels incredibly prophetic here. He said, "It isn't necessary that you leave home. Sit at your desk and listen. The whole world will offer itself to you."
But connection is only half the story. The other half is solitude. We need to enjoy captivity. We need to impose solitude on ourselves to disconnect from the constant digital demands.
Kleon uses strategies like slow transportation, riding the bus, even if it's slower, or going to a busy barbershop with no Wi-Fi, or just hanging out in the library. He carries a book, a pen, and a notepad, ready to use that temporary captivity for his analog work.
But the advice is not to stay put forever. You still have to leave home at some point, even if it's only for a little while. Geography may not be your master, but place still matters. Immensely.
You have to make your brain uncomfortable. Travel and distance are the secret tonic of creativity, according to Jonah Lehrer. Seeing a foreign culture or a different environment fundamentally shifts your perspective. When you come home, the world looks the same, but something in your mind has changed, and that changes everything you create.
And when you're choosing a location to settle, Kleon has some nuanced advice. Bad weather can often lead to better art because it forces you indoors to work. Think Cleveland winters or Texas summers.
And importantly, live around interesting people who do different things. Filmmakers, tech geeks, musicians, not just clones of yourself.
Ultimately, you have to find a place that feeds you creatively, socially, spiritually, and literally. But the beauty of it is your core support network, the people you steal from and the people you talk to, they're always available online.
Right, so we've established the creative process, the influences, the environment. Now let's talk about the structure that's required to sustain the engine for decades.
Part 5. Rule number 9. Be boring. It's the only way to get work done.
This is such a forceful rejection of that romantic, chaotic genius archetype. Creativity requires enormous mental energy, and you just cannot afford to waste it on unnecessary drama or self-inflicted chaos.
Gustave Flaubert provided the ultimate rule for longevity. Be regular and orderly in your life so that you may be violent and original in your work.
This means prioritizing simple self-preservation. Kleon's humorous twist on Neil Young's famous line is that it's better to burn slow and see your grandkids.
Practical advice here means attending to your physical needs. Patti Smith's advice to young artists was simple. Go to the dentist, eat well, sleep well, exercise. You need your body and your mind running optimally to handle the intellectual violence of original work.
And to maintain that boring life, you need financial peace. You have to stay out of debt and learn about money early. Kleon's grandpa's advice was simple. Son, it's not the money you make, it's the money you hold on to.
And the art of holding on to money is just saying no. Saying no to the constant churn of consumer culture, that new gadget, the expensive takeout, the $4 latte. The photographer Bill Cunningham explained the freedom this provides perfectly. If you don't take money, they can't tell you what to do.
Financial freedom equals creative freedom.
Which leads to the crucial topic of the day job. You need to keep your day job until your creative pursuit can truly support you, and often even after that. A day job provides money, a routine, a connection to other people, and most importantly, financial freedom for your art. It allows you to create without the pressure of paying the rent.
But the day job isn't just a funding source. It's a source of material. You should be actively stealing skills from your day job.
How do you identify those skills?
Well, Kleon stole research skills from his library job, web design from a marketing gig, copywriting from an office role. You can look at the organizational skills. If you learned project management for a corporate client, you can apply that exact structure to managing your own art project cycles. If you learned complex accounting software, use that knowledge to handle your own creative inventory. Your day job is training you in structure, something the chaotic artist often desperately needs.
Inertia is the death of creativity. You have to work every day no matter what. The work will get done in the time available. You might feel like you're living a double life, but the poet Philip Larkin encouraged this. He said to be utterly schizoid about it all, using each personality as a refuge from the other.
To enforce this daily work, we need structure tools. First, get yourself a calendar. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld's method is famous for this. Get a huge wall calendar, break your work into daily chunks.
And make a big fat X every single day you finish.
And the goal is simple. Don't break the chain. This method works because it transforms an overwhelming long-term goal, like finish the novel, into a simple, non-negotiable daily task. Make an X. A body of work is just a slow, simple accumulation of those small, daily X marks.
Second tool, keep a logbook. This is different from the praise file and the swipe file. It's just a simple list of the major events of the day, what project you worked on, what movie you saw, who you had lunch with. It tracks how far the ship has sailed, and it combats that feeling of wasted time.
Nicholson Baker explained the logbook's profound power. If you ask yourself, what happened today? You often remember the worst thing. But if you ask, what's the best thing that happened today? It forces a cheerful retrospection that pulls up small, specific details, a slant of light, a wonderful expression, a delicious meal details that become fodder for future spieling.
And finally, Kleon offers advice that is perhaps the most defining decision for a creative life. Marry well. This applies to spouses, key friends, and business partners. You need champions.
Being obsessed with a creative pursuit is hard on a partner. A good partner is a champion, a maid, a cook, an editor, a motivational speaker, all rolled into one. Tom Waits spoke so openly about his wife and collaborator, Kathleen Brennan. He said, "She rescued me. I'd be playing in a steakhouse right now if it wasn't for her."
A good partner provides the structure and the grounding necessary for the creative person to fly high.
Okay, we finished the rules with rule number 10. Creativity is subtraction.
In a world of infinite possibilities, the secret to getting ahead is figuring out what to leave out so you can concentrate on what is truly important. Limitless possibilities are paralyzing. Boundaries are liberating.
The primary way to overcome creative block is to impose constraints on yourself. Limitations mean freedom. Write a memo using only 500 words. Design a website using only 3 colors. Start a business without any startup capital.
The most compelling example of this is Dr. Seuss. After writing The Cat in the Hat with a limited vocabulary of 236 words, his editor bet him he couldn't write a book with only 50 words.
And the result was Green Eggs and Ham. It demonstrates that success often comes when you are forced to work against a severe limitation.
Jack White confirms this paradox for music. He says having every possible tool and a limitless budget kills creativity. It's the struggle against the lack of tools that forces innovation.
The artist Saul Steinberg noted that what we respond to in any work of art is the artist's struggle against their limitations. It's often what the artist chooses to leave out, the details, the options, the tools, that makes the final art so interesting and unique.
So in the end, creativity isn't just about the things we choose to put in. It's about the conscious, strategic things we choose to leave out.
The final choice always rests with the creator's editorial hand.
So we've covered massive ground today. We've moved from the philosophical acceptance of influence and intellectual theft all the way to the very tactical requirement of building a boring, ordered life.
The playbook is pretty clear, I think. Embrace influence through selective stealing.
Pair analog creation for generating ideas with the digital sharing for editing.
And use a mundane routine to fuel your most violent and original work.
The main takeaway for you, the learner, is that the time for waiting is over. Stop waiting for self-knowledge or for some mythical lightning bolt of originality to strike.
Start making things today. Copy wisely from many, many sources, and make sure that the structure of your life is built to sustain your creative output, not drain it.
We mentioned earlier that Kleon had some deleted scenes from his original index cards, and one of them was the idea to steal from yourself, referencing dreams, memories, past experiences.
Right.
So if your job, as we discussed, is to constantly feed that creative engine with new material, we'll leave you with this final provocative thought.
What systems are you building right now today to ensure your future self has enough material to steal from?
What will your future self thank you for saving in your logbook, your praise file, or your morgue file?
Because the future of your work depends entirely on what you prioritize collecting and documenting right now.
So start that logbook, start that swipe file, go get to work. We encourage you to explore the original source material and all the great writers Kleon stole from. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.